Dalaran is the magic city of the Kirin Tor. Originally located between the Proudmore Lake and Alterac Mountains, it was introduced early in the RTS games, and since then it has been a very important location in the game's lore time and time again. Because of this, Dalaran has evolved with the Warcraft franchise, and there are probably more iterations of this city than any other in the game's universe. In this video, we are going to go back in time and see how this violet nation has evolved from when it was first introduced up until present day. This is the evolution of Dalaran. Enjoy! Lore-wise, the nation of Dalaran has been around for a long time. It was founded by mages that left the restraining confines of Strom, which once was the capital city of the human nation Arathor. The first time it appears in the games is in Warcraft 2 Tides of Darkness. During the Orc mission, the Siege of Dalaran, we are given the greatest weapon of Orgrim Doomhammer to be able to assault and destroy the city.
The hour of judgment is close at hand as the orcish hordes stand ready to sweep across this domain like a pestilence and seize the capital of Lordaeron. Standing vigilant above the plains like the descending arm of Twilight itself is the violet citadel of Dalaran. The citadel, serving as sanctum and haven to the mages of Lordaeron, is the last barrier between the orcs and their subjugation of humanity. Manifested in the combined magical prowess of all mages within the Alliance, this place must fall for the Horde to conquer Lordaeron. Fortunately, Orgrim Doomhammer has saved his greatest weapon, ready to unleash it upon the unsuspecting Alliance at just this moment. Dragons.
In this mission, we assault the Violet Citadel of Dalaran on Cross Island, which, as the name suggests, is a cross-shaped island on the shores of Proudmore Lake. Since the orcs have Orgrim's greatest weapon, dragons, Dalaran suffers a painful loss as the citadel is destroyed, and even though it was quickly rebuilt, Cross Island would be assaulted again shortly after in the expansion pack Beyond the Dark Portal. This time, the orcs returned led by Terran Gorefiend to steal an artifact called the Eye of Dalaran.
With the Book of Medivh in your control and the jeweled scepter delivered to Ner'zhul, only one artifact remains to be won. The mages of Dalaran have created a device to focus their magics in an effort to reconstruct the Violet Citadel. Ner'zhul desires this Eye of Dalaran to focus the dark powers of the underworld for the creation of his portals. Terran Gorefiend has traveled to the stronghold of the human mages at Cross Island, where they now rebuilt their towers amid heavy fortifications. You must break through their shoreline defenses, establish a base, and capture the Eye of Dalaran. No walls will protect them from the vengeance of the Horde.
Once again, the orcs' assault is successful, and Terran Gorefiend and his Death Knights manage to break into the arcane vaults of the Violet Citadel, where they steal the Eye of Dalaran. After that, Terran Gorefiend escapes on the back of Deathwing and delivers the Eye to Ner'zhul. So during Warcraft 2, Dalaran had quite a rough time, and as we continue forward, it is not going to get easier. In Warcraft 3, Reign of Chaos, Dalaran makes its first appearance very early on, during an in-game cinematic in the human campaign The Scourge of Lordaeron. It is called Jaina's meeting and shows how Antonidas dismisses Medivh's prophecy and his meeting with Jaina Proudmore, where he sends her out on a mission to investigate the mysterious plague along with Arthas Menethil.
You can show yourself now, Jaina. He's gone.
I'm sorry for eavesdropping, Master, but...
It's your inquisitive nature that I've come to rely on, child. That crazed fool's convinced that the world is about to end.
Later on in the game, during the undead campaign Path of the Damned, Arthas marches upon the city of Dalaran with his army of Scourge. Just like in Warcraft 2, the mission is called the Siege of Dalaran, and whether that is a coincidence or a homage to the old game, I have no idea. In this mission, Antonidas has prepared for Arthas' arrival with a special aura that destroys the undead while leaving the living unharmed. While this manages to slow down the Fallen Prince, it does not manage to stop him. In the end, Arthas is successful in killing Antonidas and retrieving the Spellbook of Medivh, after which he and Kel'Thuzad retracted their forces in order to start summoning Archimonde into Azeroth. In the last mission of the Undead campaign, called Under the Burning Sky, the Kirin Tor and their allies pulled together for one last massive assault on the Scourge in order to stop this summoning. Their attempts fail, and after Archimonde is summoned into Azeroth, a cinematic is shown where he destroys the entire city of Dalaran.
Agir Udal Nutarus. Agir Modas Betalum Daltaro Ildas Glaku Rithum Setharas Amanar Kutamus Belar Sumaris Azaratha Rakas Inkula. Belanora, Mordanos Melar, Ilamur no Falos Kadar.
In the Frozen Throne expansion pack, we return to the city once again. This time, in the Sentinels campaign, Illidan has captured the Eye of Sargeras from the Broken Isles and taken it to Dalaran, where he began to cast a spell to tear apart the continent of Northrend, which was the seat of Ner'zhul's power. However, Malfurion Stormrage and Maiev Shadowsong successfully managed to storm Dalaran, stop Illidan and destroy the Eye of Sargeras. This is not the last appearance of the city in the expansion. The Alliance campaign Curse of the Blood Elves starts out in the ruins of Dalaran, where Prince Kael'thas is ordered by Lord Garithos to repair arcane observatories within the city.
We ran into a group of night elves from across the sea.
I am not interested in your fanciful excuses. You elves are here to serve the Alliance, thus you will obey my commands to the letter. Is that clear?
Yes, Lord Garithos.
Now, the undead have begun a new offensive to retake Dalaran. Their primary strike force marched south through Silverpine, but we managed to halt its advance at the base of the mountains.
My men are ready to fight, my lord. When shall we leave for the front?
We will be leaving immediately, but your people will be staying here. Our scouts report that a second strike force may be heading this way from the east. I need you to repair the outlying observatory so that we can monitor that region.
But, my lord, we are warriors, not—
You have your orders, Prince Kael'thas. I trust your elven ears heard them clearly enough. Move out!
A decent part of this mission takes place on the streets of Dalaran, which are now riddled with burning legion spawns, bandits, mutants, and renegade wizards. The observatories Kael'thas repairs then detects a large number of undead nearby. Lord Garithos orders Kael'thas to take care of these undead, but at the same time he retracts all his forces, turning the order into nothing short of a suicide mission.
Lord Garithos has commanded that you crush the undead before they can march on Dalaran.
That doesn't sound too difficult.
Unfortunately, your forces may be a little thin. You see, Lord Garithos has also ordered that all foot soldiers, cavalry, and support teams report to the front lines immediately. You men, move out!
This is preposterous. Am I to assault the undead with nothing but sticks and harsh language?
The Grand Marshal has great confidence in your abilities. Be creative.
Garithos. I'm starting to hate that man.
Kael'thas manages to complete his task only because he gets help from Lady Vash. When Lord Garithos finds out about this, he brands the prince and his elves as traitors and imprisons them in the dungeons of Dalaran in await of their execution.
So, Kael, you've shown your true colors at last. I knew you were in league with those serpents. Now I have all the proof I need to execute every traitorous one of you.
Please, my lord, spare my men. It was my decision to—
Save your breath. I never trusted you, vain-glorious elves. It was a mistake to accept you into the Alliance in the first place. Now, at long last, you'll be dealt with appropriately. Take them away!
Luckily, Lady Vash returned to break them out, and in the third mission of the campaign, the Dungeons of Dalaran, we have to fight jailers, creatures kept here by the Kirin Tor, and the ghost of the Archmage is slain by Arthas, as we make our escape through the dungeons. So throughout the RTS games, we return to Dalaran again and again for several important lore moments. As we leave it behind, the city is a ruined shell of what it once was, completely shattered from the Second and Third War. However, as we move into the world of Warcraft, the mages of the Kirin Tor would show that they would not let their nation die that easily. According to the lore, the mages returned to Dalaran a few months later, destroyed the remaining undead and reclaimed what was left of their city. After that, they summoned a protective globe around it, which they kept active while they rebuilt their home. If you went to Lordamer Lake in Vanilla WoW, you wouldn't be able to enter the city itself. You would only find a Dalaran dome with ruins of buildings around it. You would also see Dalaran workers, summoners and elemental slaves move around the area, but in general there wasn't much to do here when the game was released. Since the release of the game, the Dalaran Dome has also been present within the Deadmines instance, in the small hidden area commonly referred to as the Outland Testing Area, and even though the dome has been removed from Lordamer Lake in present day, you can still find it here in the Deadmines. Another notable thing is that Cross Island, that played a big part in Warcraft 2, was left out completely in the World of Warcraft. It is unclear if land was built up around Dalaran during the first rebuilding, if Fenris Isle is what remains of Cross Island, or if Blizzard decided to simply retcon it. As time moved on and the Burning Crusade was released, Dalaran remained under its purple globe. It did however play a small part in the Karazhan attunement, as we were sent here to contact Archmage Cedric in a quest Contact from Dalaran. It was just a short errand where we delivered a report to him, and we never actually entered the city as he was standing outside the dome, but it was a small inclusion at least. Now, with the release of Wrath of the Lich King, the city was finally rebuilt and it was time to lift the dome. Not only that, but the mages of the Kirin Tor teleported the entire city to Northrend and made it fly high up in the sky, where it would serve as our base in the fight against the Lich King himself. And when this was announced at BlizzCon in 2007, it was met with very positive reactions.
So, what about the capital city? Where's our Shatrath? Where are we going to go to bind and do things? Where do you want to go to kind of set up your home base? So, this place might look familiar. So Dalaran will end up being the capital, kind of the home city for Northrend. And so it's going to be on the move a little bit. So basically, you see, Dalaran's going to be taking off and making its way up to Northrend. The Kirin Tor, who are inhabiting Dalaran, holding up what they're doing, you know, they want to basically set up a final front against the Blue Dragonflight. Blue Dragonflight, ever since Malagos kind of lost his head, they're pretty much against all magic users in all of Azeroth. And the Kirin Tor obviously are into magic, that's their whole thing. So they're moving Dalaran up to kind of take a stand and, you know, he'd be there and so they can be right in the forefront of the fight. And so Dalaran is going to be our home city for that. So it's going to be floating above, in the air, above the zone. Now you'll be able to access it from the ground or from flying mounts, either way. Here's a little view of where Dalaran's going to be. It's going to be really centrally located in Northrend. It's super accessible. You know, we learned a lot from Shatrath, where its placement was and how that worked out. We wanted to take what we learned there and apply those theories here, but also just, you know, steep the city just like Shatrath, a ton of lore, and really make it a cool place for people to bind and camp out and be able to access their vendors and do stuff they need to do.
Early on in the expansion's development, Dalaran had a slightly different design. The layout of the city resembled what we have today, but the buildings had a much more traditional human feel. It almost looks like this could be a mage quarter in Stormwind and not a street in Dalaran. These buildings also resembles the ruins around the dome in Lordamer Lake much more, as they were traditional human structures. As the development went on, the structures were refined and Dalaran took its form. In general, this hub was much smaller than the other cities in the game, but at the same time it had more NPCs, objects and doodads, and players from both the Horde and the Alliance here at once. This meant that more things had to be loaded at the same time than ever before, which meant that Dalaran had a huge problem with lag back in the day. This became a very common topic on the forums, and many players began to call Dalaran Lagaran because of all of its issues. As a matter of fact, this was such a big problem that Blizzard was forced to place the Argent tournament all the way over in Icecrown, instead of directly below Dalaran as it was originally intended, because that would literally have been unplayable. Most of the city was neutral, but two areas were faction specific. The Silver Enclave is only available to the Alliance, while the Sunreaver Sanctuary is only open to the Horde. The city fulfilled most needs of the players, but some notable things were missing. There were no class trainers if you weren't a mage, and there was no auction house. This was added in patch 3.2 in the form of steam-powered auctioneers, but these were only usable if you had level engineering. Another notable thing is that, with the exception of Cressus Landing and the Underbelly tunnels, Dalaran used to be a no-fly zone. This restriction was kept throughout the expansion, but lifted with Cataclysm. There's a lot of other interesting things to do in Dalaran as well. For instance, the higher learning achievement. There are 8 special books that spawn around the city, and if you manage to find them all, you are given access to a secret room in the spires of the Violet Citadel and a Kirin Tor familiar pet. Just like Stormwind and Orgrimmar, Dalaran also held a 5-man dungeon. The Violet Hold is the prison complex which Kael Thas was once imprisoned in, but while he was moving around in a labyrinth, the WoW instance is only one room. When Dalaran was revamped for Legion, the Violet Hold was brought with it. Overall, despite many of its issues, much of the player base seemed to look back at Dalaran with fond memories, and it really was an epic base of operations to have while we battled the Lich King. When Arthas fell, the Horde went back to Orgrimmar and the Alliance to Stormwind to fight the threats of the Cataclysm, and Dalaran was left behind in the cold north. In the Cataclysm expansions, a few tweaks was made to the city. The flight restriction was lifted, the auction house opened to all players, class trainers were added, and portals to most Alliance and Horde capitals were removed. The question was raised on the forums whether or not Dalaran would move out of Northrend and continue to be the main hub in this expansion as well, but Bornak, one of the community managers of the US forums, explained that that would not be the case. There are no plans to move Dalaran right now. Anybody leveling through the Northrend content would have a hard time without it. Even though the Cataclysm left Dalaran in Northrend instead of moving it forward in time, it did add another version of the city hidden away in one of its dungeons. Since End Times takes place in Northrend, much of that continent was copied into the dungeon map. Even though you are never visiting Crystalsong Forest in End Times, much of the zone is still there, along with a complete version of Dalaran, without any NPCs. It is absolutely possible to get here on live servers, and there are plenty of guides on the internet if you wish to do so. In Mists of Pandaria, the city became the staging ground for the scenario Purge of Dalaran. In it, we get to experience the civil war within the Kirin Tor, as the Blood Elven Sunreaver faction is purged from Dalaran with sharpened steel. In this scenario, the city is not located in Northrend, because according to the lore it left after Arthas was killed. Instead, it is hovering above water in an unspecified location, so it is impossible to say exactly where we are. After the purge, Jaina declares the city Alliance only once again. So lore-wise, the Horde shouldn't be allowed into Dalaran after this point. However, gameplay is taken over lore in this case, so if the Horde went to Dalaran in Northrend, there would be no difference at all. The Sun Reavers would still be there and everything would be as normal. And since Northrend is still frozen in the Wrath of the Lich King timeline, I guess it would have been kinda strange if they actually made any changes. Another interesting fact is that Dalaran was originally intended to be involved in the siege of Orgrimmar. In an interview between Jesse Cox and Dave Kozak, we learned that Dalaran was originally going to hover above Orgrimmar and bombard it with the full power of the Kirin Tor.
Okay, what about Dalaran? Where'd that go?
One thing we haven't really had time to show in game, when you play through the level 1 through 60 stuff, you're sort of playing in a post-Cataclysm Azeroth. When you go to Outland, you're really going back to Outland as it was when we first made the Outland campaign. And certainly when you go to Northrend, you're going back through, before Garrosh was war chief, you're doing the Northrend campaign. Those are kind of like Caverns of Time instances, and maybe we'll kind of more expressly spell that out in the game so that you really feel like you're traveling back to Northrend of 5 years ago when you do it. So when you go to Northrend, or when you go to Dalaran in Northrend, that's where Dalaran was in Northrend while Arthas was on the throne. What was happening there? Where is it today? It's kind of a mystery. What's nice is it's a city on the move. I actually, in my opinion, it was steaming toward Orgrimmar. We had talked about having it looming over Orgrimmar, shooting down magical bolts at it while wyverns are circling at it, and there's this big aerial combat above you. And then for many reasons, mostly technical, like, we just take a city and put it on top of a city and hope that the game performs well, and it probably wouldn't. Mostly technical reasons, but also artistic reasons. We thought that made the whole encounter feel very sci-fi, as opposed to, sieging a city and it's orcs and you're kicking their butts. So we decided not to have Dalaran floating above there, even though I thought that would have been a really cool way for Jaina to come back and payback time, bitches. Family friendly, right?
Right.
Yeah. So if you'd like to imagine that it's busy bombarding Bilgewater Harbor, that would be kind of fun. I think that would be pretty neat.
I know a lot of Alliance players who are like, there is a lot of space in Stormwind now for a giant floating city.
Just replace the park. Just land it. Boom.
Just land that thing.
Oh, that is pretty awesome. Although it would effectively combine 2 Alliance cities into 1 Alliance city, and maybe that wouldn't be as cool.
Just a super Alliance city.
Super city. Yeah.
In Legion, Dalaran has returned again as our main hub. In the pre-expansion events, it was moved above Karasan in the Deadwind Pass. The city remains here for the initial questing, but when the Legion attacks, Khadgar and the other mages move it once again, and this time to the Broken Isles.
Citizens of Azeroth! Today is the day we turn the tide! Today is the day that we retake our world and send the Legion back to the hell that spawned them! Our path is clear! The pillars of creation await on the Broken Isles!
This new version of Dalaran has undergone quite a lot of changes. In the center of town, a huge tower has been raised, which now holds the Chamber of the Guardian. The underbelly has been updated as well, and it now hosts a free-for-all PvP area. Down here is also where the black market auction house has opened up its doors. With a new addition of class order halls, 2 of them have actually been placed right here in the city. The Hall of Shadows is a hidden area in the underbelly, where the shady rogues go about their businesses right underneath the noses of the unsuspecting inhabitants of Dalaran. It is mainly accessed through a hidden entrance in the glorious goods store, but there are other hidden ways to get in. A nice detail is that every house with a passageway into the Hall of Shadows have a raven sitting on the sign outside the door. The other class which has their order halls in Dalaran is of course the mages. They gather in the Hall of the Guardian on the upper levels of the Violet Citadel. In my personal opinion, this is the most beautiful order hall and one that has perfectly captured the feel of the class. I have played quite a bit of Fire Mage in this expansion, and whenever I am here I feel right at home. There has been plenty of other visual and graphical improvements, so let's take a look around the city just how big of a difference it is. Story-wise, it makes sense to use Dalaran as the hub for this expansion, but it is not entirely without problems. Because Northern is set in the past, we still need Dalaran to remain there as well, meaning we now have 2 versions of the same major city. If you also count the Dalaran above Karazhan, the one in the Purge of Dalaran scenario and the one in End Times, there are now 5 Dalarans in the game. If you are going to believe the forums, for some people, the return of Dalaran has also meant the return of Lagaran. The problem isn't nearly as bad as it was back in Wrath of the Lich King, but it is still here to some extent. Overall though, it seems that most of the player base like that we are back in Dalaran, and please let me know in the comments down below what you think about it. The story of Legion has just begun, so it is very possible that the Dalaran we have now, in all of its updated glory, will continue to change even more throughout the expansion. But now we know how this city has changed from Warcraft 2 up until today. It has been attacked and destroyed again and again, but risen back up stronger every time. It has aided all the heroes of Azeroth against several of our most dangerous enemies, and it is undeniably one of the most important cities in the Warcraft lore. I hope you enjoyed this history lesson of its evolution. If you did, please go ahead and like the video, and thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more of Warcraft from a new perspective, go ahead and subscribe, and I will be back with more stuff very soon. As always, an extra thanks to my fantastic supporters on Patreon. You really are helping me out more than you think. See you all in the next video, and until then, take care.